Captain Zarathek of the galactic trade vessel Silent Wanderer stared at the emergency beacon blinking red on her console. Her four arms moved frantically across the controls as she tried to process what her sensors were telling her. The massive cargo freighter Prosperity's Dawn had suffered catastrophic engine failure 3 sectors away from the nearest supply station. "By the 7 moons," she whispered, her voice crackling through her translator implant. "Keth, get over here and confirm these readings." Her second-in-command, a tall, crystalline being from the Zerith Collective, approached with measured steps. His body chimed softly as internal minerals shifted. "Captain, the Prosperity's Dawn is carrying 847 souls from 12 different species. Their life support systems are failing, and their food synthesizers went offline when the main reactor exploded." Zarathek felt her stomach drop. The Prosperity's Dawn was a civilian transport, carrying families and workers heading to the new colony worlds in the Outer Rim. Without food, they had maybe 2 weeks before widespread starvation would begin claiming lives. Her own ship carried emergency rations for her crew of 15, but nowhere near enough to feed nearly 1,000 beings. "What about other vessels in the area?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "The nearest galactic aid ship is 47 days away at maximum speed." By then, Ket's voice trailed off, but they both understood. It would be too late. Zarathek was about to order a course change to rendezvous with the Prosperity's Dawn when her communications officer, a scaled reptarian named Voss, spoke up from his station. "Captain, I'm detecting another vessel in the area. It's unusual." "Unusual how?" "The energy signature doesn't match any known galactic civilization. The ship appears to be relatively small, perhaps designed for a crew of 5 or 6, but it's heading directly toward the Prosperity's Dawn." Zarathek pulled up the scanner data on her main screen. The unknown vessel was indeed small compared to the massive freighter, looking almost primitive by galactic standards. Its hull showed signs of long-distance travel, with the kind of wear that came from crossing vast stretches of space without regular maintenance stops. "Are they responding to the distress signal?" she asked. "Unknown, Captain. They haven't responded to our hails, but their trajectory suggests they're definitely aware of the emergency." As they watched, the small vessel approached the Prosperity's Dawn and extended what appeared to be a docking tube. Moments later, Zarathek's console lit up with an incoming transmission. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth vessel Wandering Star," came a voice that was somehow both alien and strangely familiar. "We've received your distress call and are prepared to offer assistance. We understand you have a food shortage situation." Zarathek exchanged glances with her crew. Earth. They'd heard rumors of this new species that had recently joined the galactic community, but few had encountered them directly. The humans were supposedly from a small blue planet in a remote spiral arm of the galaxy. "Captain Chun," Zarathek responded. "This is Captain Zarathek of the Silent Wanderer. We're also responding to the emergency, but I must inform you that the Prosperity's Dawn has nearly 900 souls aboard. Our combined emergency supplies might last perhaps 3 days for that many beings." There was a pause before the human's voice returned, and Zarathek could swear she heard something that sounded almost like amusement. "Captain Zarathek, we appreciate your concern, but I think there might be some misunderstanding about the scope of the problem. We've already spoken with Captain Mellock of the Prosperity's Dawn. The food situation is going to be just fine. I don't understand. Do you have some kind of advanced synthesis technology?" "In a manner of speaking, yes. My crew and I've been traveling for 6 months, and we've gotten pretty good at feeding ourselves. We always pack extra. Would you like to join us? I think dinner should be ready in about an hour, and I was planning to make dessert afterward." Zarathek stared at her console in confusion. The human was talking as if feeding nearly 1,000 diverse beings was as simple as cooking a meal. That was impossible. Food synthesis for that many individuals required massive industrial equipment and vast stores of base proteins and nutrients. "Captain Chun, I think you may not fully grasp the situation. We're talking about feeding representatives from a dozen different species, each with unique nutritional requirements. The Prosperity's dawn is effectively a floating city. Oh, I understand completely, came the cheerful reply. That's why I started cooking as soon as we received the distress signal. I've got plenty of rice, beans, and vegetables. Plus, I just pulled fresh bread from the oven. And Captain Mellock mentioned that several of the passengers are younglings, so I'm making extra dessert. Kids love cookies, no matter what planet they're from. The communications channel fell silent, except for the soft hum of background static. Zarathek looked at her crew, all of whom appeared to be experiencing the same bewildering confusion she felt. Did she just say she was cooking? Voss asked quietly. With rice and beans? Keth added, his crystalline structure flickering with puzzlement. Before Zarathek could respond, another transmission came through, this time from the Prosperity's dawn itself. Captain Zarathek, this is Captain Mellock. You need to see this. The humans, they're bringing us actual food. Real food. Not synthesized proteins, not algae paste, not nutrition blocks. Actual cooked food. They say they've prepared enough to feed everyone aboard my vessel for weeks. Zarathek felt her world tilt slightly. That's not possible, Captain Mellock. The logistics alone. Captain Zarathek, you're welcome to dock with us and see for yourself. The human captain has invited both our crews to join the passengers for what she calls a proper meal. I've never seen anything like what they're bringing aboard. Against her better judgment, but driven by curiosity that was quickly becoming overwhelming, Zarathek gave the order to dock with the massive freighter. As her ship connected to one of the Prosperity's dawn's auxiliary ports, she found herself wondering if she was about to witness some kind of miracle, or if these humans had technology so advanced that they could bend the basic laws of resource management. Either way, she was about to find out what it meant when a human said dinner was ready. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss, and Captain Zarathek stepped aboard the Prosperity's dawn with her senior crew behind her. What she found defied every expectation she'd had about emergency food relief. The main cargo bay had been transformed into something that could only be described as a feast hall. Long tables made from cargo containers stretched across the space, covered with what appeared to be actual cloth. The air was filled with aromas that made Zarathek's sensory organs tingle in ways her emergency rations never had. Captain Shin approached them with a warm smile that seemed to be a universal human expression. She was smaller than most galactic species, but there was an energy about her that filled the space. Her skin was a warm brown color, and her dark hair was tied back in what looked like a practical knot. Captain Zarathek, welcome aboard. I'm Sarah Chun. I hope you brought your appetite. Before Zarathek could respond, she found herself staring past the human at the impossible scene unfolding around them. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy were seated at the makeshift tables, and they were all eating. Not just consuming nutrition blocks or sipping algae smoothies, but actually eating what appeared to be real prepared food from actual plates and bowls. A family of Thraxians, massive bear-like creatures with thick fur and intimidating claws, were carefully using utensils to eat what looked like seasoned vegetables and grains. Near them, a group of delicate Pixari, who normally subsisted on carefully balanced mineral solutions, were somehow consuming what appeared to be bread with visible enjoyment. How is this possible? Zarathek whispered. Sarah Chun followed her gaze and grinned. Oh, that's the beauty of real food. It's adaptable. Most species in the galaxy can digest basic proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. They just need them prepared in ways that work with their physiology. She led them toward one of the tables, where Zarathek could see the spread more clearly. There were enormous pots of what looked like rice mixed with beans and vegetables, baskets of bread that smelled like nothing she'd ever encountered, and plates of roasted vegetables that somehow looked appealing even though they were just plants. The Thraxians need higher protein content, so I made sure their portions have extra beans, and some of the synthetic meat we carry for long journeys, Sarah explained casually, as if feeding hundreds of diverse beings was a simple logistics problem. The Pixari can't process too much fiber, so they get the rice with extra herbs and the softer vegetables. The Kelmorian younglings get smaller portions with extra bread because growing kids need carbs no matter what species they are. But Where did all this food come from? Keth asked, his crystalline body chiming with confusion. Your vessel isn't large enough to carry conventional food stores for this many beings. Sarah Chin's expression shifted to one of mild puzzlement, as if the question itself didn't quite make sense. We always carry food with us. Real food. How else would we eat? Synthesizers, Voss said immediately. Everyone uses synthesizers. They're efficient, they produce optimal nutrition, and they don't require storage space for raw materials. Synthesizers? Sarah looked genuinely confused. You mean those machines that make the paste-like substance from base proteins? We tried some of that at the spaceport on Kepler Station. It was functional, I suppose. But why would you eat that when you could have real food? Zarathek felt like she was having a conversation with someone who had missed several centuries of technological development. Because real food requires vast amounts of storage space, complex preparation facilities, and enormous quantities of raw materials. A single meal for this many beings would require 200 pounds of rice, 100 pounds of beans, about 50 pounds of mixed vegetables, salt, spices, and cooking oil, Sarah interrupted, ticking off items on her fingers. Plus flour, yeast, and water for the bread. It's really not that complicated. You carry 200 pounds of rice on your ship? Keth asked incredulously. Well, closer to 2,000 pounds, actually. Plus beans, flour, oil, canned vegetables, dried fruits, spices, and everything else we need for a 6-month journey. We've got a small garden module where we grow fresh vegetables and herbs. Doesn't everyone? The silence that followed was profound. Zarathek realized that while the rest of the galaxy had spent centuries perfecting the efficient synthesis of nutrition, humans had simply kept doing what they'd presumably always done, carrying food and cooking it. But the weight, Voss protested weakly. The storage requirements are manageable if you plan properly, Sarah replied. Plus, there's something synthesizers can't replicate. She gestured toward the filled tables around them. Look at everyone. Really look. Zarathek followed her guidance and observed the passengers more carefully. What she saw surprised her. These beings weren't just eating. They were talking, laughing, sharing their meals with each other. Children of different species were sitting together, trying each other's food. Adults were striking up conversations across species lines that normally never interacted. Sharing a meal brings beings together, Sarah explained softly. It's not just about nutrition. It's about community. When you sit down and eat real food that someone prepared with care, it creates bonds that emergency rations never could. A small Kelmorian child, barely reaching Zarathek's waist, approached their group with a plate in her tiny hands. Captain Chun, I saved you some bread, the child said in the high, musical language of her species. Thank you for feeding us. My parents said we would go hungry, but now everything smells wonderful. Sarah knelt down to the child's level and accepted the bread with a smile that needed no translation. Thank you, Lila. Did you try the cookies yet? I made extra chocolate chips just for you. The child's eyes widened, and she scampered back toward the tables with obvious excitement. Cookies, Zarathek repeated numbly. You made cookies. Fresh from the oven about an hour ago, Sarah confirmed. Though I had to adjust the recipe for some of the species here. The Thraxians can't process too much sugar, and the Xerith need extra minerals, so I made several different varieties. Captain Mellock of the Prosperity's Dawn approached their group, his large, slug-like form moving with more energy than Zarathek had seen from his species in years. Captain Zarathek, have you tried the bread? It's extraordinary. My crew has been eating synthesized nutrition for 3 years, and I had forgotten that food could actually taste like something. Captain Mellock, how much food did the humans bring aboard? Zarathek asked, still struggling to understand the scope of what she was witnessing. Enough to feed everyone here for 2 weeks, with surplus. And Captain Chun says this is just a portion of their ship stores. Sarah Chun nodded casually. We always pack extra food when we travel. You never know when you might encounter folks who need a meal. Space is vast and dangerous, and nobody should go hungry if you can help it. As if summoned by her words, another human appeared, carrying a large tray laden with what could only be the cookies she'd mentioned. This human was taller, with lighter skin and short red hair, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone completely comfortable in his environment. "Sarah, the second batch is done," he announced. "I made the mineral-enriched ones for the Xerith and the low-sugar ones for the Thraxians. The Pixari children seem to love the fruit-based ones." "Zarathek Keth Voss, meet my engineer, Marcus O'Brien," Sarah said. "Marcus, these are the captains from the Silent Wanderer. They're trying to understand how we managed to feed everyone." Marcus looked genuinely confused by the question. "Well, we cooked, same as we do every day. Though, admittedly, this was a bigger batch than usual." Zarathek realized she was witnessing something that would fundamentally change her understanding of what it meant to travel through space. While the galaxy had spent centuries optimizing efficiency, humans had simply continued to care for each other in the most basic way possible, by sharing real food prepared with actual care and attention. And somehow impossibly, it worked better than anything she'd ever seen. 3 hours later, Zarathek found herself in the galley of the human vessel Wandering Star, and nothing in her decades of space travel had prepared her for what she was seeing. The cooking area wasn't the sterile, efficient food synthesis base she expected. Instead, it looked like something from the primitive civilization section of a galactic museum. There were actual pots and pans hanging from hooks on the walls, shelves lined with jars containing what appeared to be dried herbs and spices, a large oven that radiated actual heat, and storage compartments filled with raw ingredients that would have made any galactic efficiency expert weep. "This is where the magic happens," Sarachin said, stirring something in a large pot that smelled absolutely incredible. "Marcus, can you show Captain Zarathek the storage bay while I finish this soup?" Marcus led them through a hatch into an adjoining compartment, and Zarathek's 4 arms flailed in astonishment. The room was lined floor to ceiling with containers, bags, and bins. Rice in 50-pound sacks, beans in every variety she'd ever heard of, and several she hadn't. Flour, oil, canned vegetables, dried fruits, and racks upon racks of spices in small jars. "By the 7 moons," she breathed. "How much of your ship's space does food storage occupy?" "About 30%, Marcus replied casually. "Maybe 35 if you count the guard module and the kitchen equipment." Ket's crystalline structure chimed in distress. "You've sacrificed over a third of your vessel's functional space for food?" Marcus looked puzzled by the reaction. "Of course. What's more functional than eating? Sarah and I spend about 3 hours a day cooking and preparing meals. It's one of the highlights of our day." "But the efficiency loss," Voss protested. "You could carry advanced sensor arrays, extra engine components, scientific equipment." "We have all of that too," Marcus said patiently. "We just designed our ship around the idea that we're going to be living in it, not just existing in it. Real food is part of what makes life worth living." He led them deeper into the storage area, pointing out various items. "This is our grain section. Rice, wheat, oats, barley. We can make dozens of different meals from these basics. The bean section over there provides protein and fiber. The spice rack gives us flavor variety." Zarathek picked up a small jar labeled oregano and opened it. The smell that emerged was complex and aromatic in a way that made her sensory organs tingle. "What does this do?" "It makes food taste better," Marcus explained simply. "Humans figured out thousands of years ago that the difference between food and good food is usually just the right combination of herbs and spices. You carry dozens of different flavor enhancers just to make food taste better." Keth asked incredulously. "Several hundred. Actually," Marcus corrected. "Sarah's the real expert, but she can make the same basic ingredients taste like dozens of different cuisines just by varying the spice combinations." They returned to the galley, where Sarah was ladling soup into containers. The smell was so appealing that Zarathek found herself involuntarily moving closer. "Vegetable soup," Sarah announced. "I made a big batch because I noticed several of the passengers on the Prosperity's Dawn looked like they could use some comfort food. Soup is universal. Every species seems to understand the concept of warm, liquid food that makes you feel better. How did you learn to cook for so many different species? Zarathek asked. The nutritional requirements vary dramatically between galactic races. Sarah shrugged, as if it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. Trial and error, mostly. Plus, I pay attention. When we dock at space stations or meet other travelers, I ask questions. What foods do they enjoy? What can't they digest? What makes them feel at home? She gestured to a thick notebook sitting on the counter, its pages filled with handwritten notes. I've been keeping a journal of what works for different species. Turns out most beings can eat most foods if you prepare them properly. Marcus handed Zarathek a small bowl of the soup, along with a piece of bread that was still warm. Try it, he encouraged. Zarathek accepted the bowl cautiously. The liquid inside was clear with floating vegetables and herbs. It smelled like comfort, if comfort had an aroma. She took a tentative sip and felt her entire body relax in a way that she hadn't experienced since her childhood on her homeworld. This is extraordinary, she whispered. It tastes like being cared for. That's exactly what it is, Sarah replied softly. Food is how humans show love to each other. When we cook for someone, we're saying, you matter to me, and I want you to be well-fed and happy. But you don't know any of us, Voss pointed out. The passengers on the Prosperity's Dawn are complete strangers. Why would you show love to strangers? Sarah and Marcus exchanged a look that held an entire conversation. Then, Sarah smiled in that warm way that seemed to be uniquely human. Because they needed help, she said simply. And because in our experience, strangers are just friends we haven't met yet. Sharing a meal is the fastest way to turn strangers into friends. The communications system chirped, and Captain Mellick's voice filled the galley. Captain Shun, this is Captain Mellock. I wanted to inform you that several of my passengers are asking if they can help with food preparation. Apparently, the smell of real cooking has awakened something in them. Sarah's face lit up with delight. Of course. Send anyone who's interested over to the galley. Cooking is always more fun with company. Within an hour, the galley of the Wandering Star had become an impromptu cultural exchange center. Beings from a dozen different species worked side by side, learning to chop vegetables, stir pots, and knead bread dough. The Thraxians, despite their massive claws, proved surprisingly delicate at preparing delicate herb mixtures. The Pixari, with their small, nimble fingers, excelled at intricate food decoration. A elderly Xerith named Crystalline Song of Morning Light worked alongside a young Kelmorian engineer, both of them learning to make what Sarah called fusion bread that incorporated flavors from both their homeworlds. This is unprecedented, Keth observed quietly to Zarathek. I've never seen interspecies cooperation happen so naturally. It's the food, Zarathek replied, watching a group of children from 3 different species work together to roll cookie dough. When beings work together to create something that nourishes everyone, it breaks down barriers in ways that diplomatic protocols never could. Sarah appeared beside them, flour dusting her apron and a satisfied smile on her face. You're starting to understand, she said. This is why humans never gave up real cooking, even when the galaxy moved to synthesizers. Food isn't just fuel for the body. It's fuel for the soul, for community, for connection between beings. But surely you see the inefficiency, Voss persisted, though his protest sounded weaker than before. The time investment, the storage requirements, the complexity. What's inefficient about happiness? Sarah asked gently. What's complex about taking care of each other? Time spent cooking is time spent showing love. Space used for food storage is space used for sustaining life in all its fullness. She gestured around the bustling galley, where dozens of beings who had been strangers hours before were now working together, laughing together, creating something beautiful together. Besides, she added with a grin, we've found that well-fed crews work better, think more clearly, and solve problems more creatively than crews running on synthesized nutrition. Good food isn't an inefficiency. It's an investment. Zarathek looked around at the scene of cooperation and joy, breathed in the aromas of real food being prepared with care, and realized that perhaps the humans hadn't missed something in galactic development. Perhaps the galaxy had missed something about what it meant to be truly civilized. 2 days later, the rescue operation had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. Word had spread through the emergency channels about the humans who were feeding nearly 1,000 stranded beings with actual cooked food, and ships had begun arriving from across the sector, ostensibly to help with the crisis, but actually to witness something that seemed impossible. Captain Zarathek stood in the observation deck of the Prosperity's Dawn, watching as the fifth ship in 2 days docked to their growing cluster of vessels. Below in the cargo bay, the daily meal preparation had become a cultural event that drew observers from dozens of species. Captain Zarathek, came Sarah Chen's voice behind her. I want to talk to you about something. Zarathek turned to see the human approaching with 2 steaming cups. Sarah offered her one, and the aroma immediately told her it was more of the coffee the humans seemed to consume regularly. She developed a taste for it over the past 2 days, despite its mild stimulant properties. What troubles you, Captain Shun? Sarah gazed out at the collection of ships surrounding them. I've been monitoring the communications traffic. Ships are coming from all over the sector, and they're not just here to help with the rescue anymore. They're here to see us cook. Is that a problem? Zarathek asked. It's becoming a spectacle, Sarah replied quietly. And that wasn't the point. We didn't feed these people to demonstrate human superiority or to prove that our way was better. We fed them because they were hungry. Zarathek sipped her coffee and considered this. Over the past 2 days, she'd observed not just the humans cooking, but their entire approach to the crisis. They'd never once suggested that their methods were superior to galactic standard practice. They'd simply acted according to their nature, which seemed to be an almost automatic impulse to care for others. But you must see what you've accomplished, Zarathek said. Look at what's happening down there. In the cargo bay below, the meal preparation had evolved into something that resembled a festival more than an emergency feeding operation. Beings from dozens of species worked together in ways that Zarathek had never seen outside of carefully orchestrated diplomatic events. They shared techniques, adapted recipes, and taught each other skills that bridged centuries of cultural isolation. A group of Thraxian cubs played with Kelmorian younglings while their parents worked side by side preparing bread. An elderly Pixari engineer demonstrated delicate knife techniques to a young Xerith who was eager to learn. Species that had maintained formal diplomatic relations for centuries were discovering personal friendships over shared cooking tasks. This isn't just about food anymore, Zarathek continued. You've shown us something we lost. The galaxy has become so efficient, so optimized, that we forgot how to simply care for each other. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Marcus, and I've been talking about that. We keep getting questions about our food technology and our efficiency protocols. People are trying to understand this, as if it's some kind of advanced system they can implement. Isn't it? No, Sarah replied firmly. It's not a system or a technology. It's just humanity. It's caring about whether people are hungry and then doing something about it because you can. It's understanding that feeding someone well is about more than just providing calories. Marcus appeared beside them, carrying a tablet filled with data. Sarah, you need to see this. The Galactic Trade Council has sent a delegation. They want to study our food distribution methodology for possible implementation in emergency protocols. Sarah closed her eyes and sighed. They want to bureaucratize kindness. It gets worse, Marcus continued. 3 different corporations have contacted us asking about licensing our culinary technology. Apparently, there's a lot of interest in what they're calling the human feeding solution. Zarathek felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature control. They want to commercialize what you do. It seems that way, Sarah replied, which misses the point entirely. You can't manufacture caring. You can't synthesize the feeling of having someone prepare a meal specifically for you. You can't package the experience of sharing food with friends. Then, what do you propose to do? Zarathek asked. Before Sarah could answer, Captain Melek's voice came over the ship's communication system. All vessel commanders, please report to the main cargo bay. We have an important announcement. The 3 of them made their way to the cargo bay, where they found the commanders and senior officers from all the ships that had joined their impromptu fleet. The assembled group represented more species and organizations than Zarathek had ever seen in one place outside of the Galactic Council chambers. Captain Mellock stood before the group, his large form somehow dignified despite the apron he wore from his recent cooking lesson. Fellow commanders, we have been contacted by the Galactic Trade Council, the Emergency Relief Organization, and no fewer than 7 major corporations. All want to study, systematize, and implement what the humans have shown us here. Murmurs rippled through the assembled officers. Zarathek could see the conflict on their faces. What they'd witnessed was remarkable and clearly beneficial, but the idea of turning it into another galactic bureaucracy felt wrong. However, Captain Mellock continued, "Before we respond to these requests, I believe we should hear from the humans themselves." Sarah stepped forward, looking small among the various alien officers, but somehow commanding attention through sheer presence. "Thank you, Captain Mellock. What I want to say is simple. You can't systematize caring." She gestured around the cargo bay, where the dinner preparations continued as they had for the past 2 days, with beings working together in harmony. What you've seen here isn't a technology or a protocol that can be copied and implemented. It's a choice that each individual makes, every day, to care about the welfare of others. You can't mandate that. You can't optimize it. You can't improve it through bureaucratic processes. But surely there are methods we can learn, interrupted Commander Veltar, a senior officer from one of the newly arrived vessels. Protocols for food storage, preparation techniques, distribution systems. Those are just details, Sarah replied patiently. The important part isn't how you store rice or what spices you use. The important part is deciding that other people's hunger matters to you personally, and then acting on that decision. Marcus stepped up beside her. Every human ship carries food like this, and every human crew knows how to cook. Not because we were trained to do it or because regulations require it, but because it's how we take care of ourselves and each other. It's how we maintain our humanity while traveling through the vast emptiness of space. "So you're saying this can't be replicated?" asked Commander Zichrek, disappointment clear in her translated voice. "I'm saying it can't be replicated by copying our methods," Sarah clarified. "But it can absolutely be replicated by making the same choice we made, that the welfare of others matters, and that feeding someone well is one of the most basic ways to show that their life has value." She paused, looking around at the assembled officers. Every species here has their own traditions of hospitality, their own ways of showing care. You don't need to copy human cooking. You need to remember your own traditions of caring for others and apply them to how you travel through space. "The question isn't whether you can implement our system," Marcus added. "The question is whether you choose to prioritize the well-being of the people you encounter, even when it's not efficient or optimal or profitable." A long silence settled over the group as the implications of this sank in. Zarathek realized that the humans were offering something far more valuable and far more challenging than a new technology. They were offering a reminder of what civilization really meant. 6 months later, Captain Zarathek stood in the newly installed galley of the Silent Wanderer, carefully stirring a pot of soup while her crew worked around her. The changes to their ship had been extensive, requiring significant modifications to create proper food storage and preparation areas. The efficiency experts at the shipyard had called it madness. Her crew called it the best decision she'd ever made. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Prosperity's Dawn," Voss called from the communication station. "Captain Mellock wants to speak with you." "Put him through," Zarathek replied, not looking up from the soup. She'd learned that cooking required attention, and that attention was actually a form of meditation she'd grown to treasure. Captain Mellock's familiar voice filled the galley. "Zarathek, my friend, how goes your journey?" "Well, Mellock, we just taken on refugees from the mining disaster at Kepler 7. 43 beings from 6 different species. We're preparing dinner for them now." "Excellent. Are you using the Thoraxian spice blend we developed?" "I find it works well for mixed groups." Zarathek smiled at the easy familiarity in Mellock's voice. The shared experience of learning to cook had created bonds between previously formal colleagues that she treasured. "We are indeed, and We're making the bread recipe that crystalline song of morning light taught us. The refugees seemed to find it comforting. Food for the soul as well as the body, Melloc agreed. Speaking of which, I have news from the Galactic Trade Council. Zarathek felt her stomach tighten. The council had been trying for months to create regulations and protocols around what they called enhanced emergency feeding procedures. Despite repeated explanations from various ship's crews that kindness couldn't be regulated, the bureaucracy continued its attempts to systematize caring. What have they decided now? They've given up, Melloc replied, and Zarathek could hear the satisfaction in his voice. The Committee on Emergency Response Optimization has concluded that the human feeding methodology is impossible to standardize due to excessive reliance on individual initiative and emotional factors. Keth looked up from where he was carefully cutting vegetables, his crystalline body chiming with amusement. They've determined that caring can't be bureaucratized? Essentially, yes. The final report states that while the approach is demonstrably effective, it's incompatible with efficient command structures and resource allocation protocols. They've recommended that it be classified as a cultural practice rather than a systematic emergency response. Zarathek laughed, a sound that would have been unthinkable in her old, sterile ship. So they've officially determined that kindness is too inefficient for official adoption. But here's the interesting part, Melloc continued. While the bureaucrats were writing their reports, individual ship commanders have been making their own choices. Do you know how many vessels in this sector now carry real food and cooking facilities? How many? Over 200, and the number grows every week. Captains who witness what we're doing choose to modify their ships, train their crews, and change how they approach their journeys through space. This didn't surprise Zarathek. She'd encountered dozens of ships over the past months whose crews had made similar choices. The Wandering Star and other human vessels had become informal teaching centers, with Captain Shun and her crew patiently showing anyone who asked how to store food properly, prepare meals for different species, and create the sense of community that came with shared cooking. The corporations have given up too, Melloc added. Apparently, there's no way to monetize something that requires genuine care. They can't manufacture empathy or package the feeling of being welcomed and fed by people who actually care about your welfare. Marcus appeared in the galley entrance, carrying a basket of fresh bread. Captain, the refugees are ready for dinner. Should we set up in the main cargo bay? Yes, and Marcus? Use the good plates. The ones we picked up at Zerith Station. Marcus nodded and headed off to prepare the dining area. Over the months, Zarathek had learned that the details mattered. Real plates instead of disposable containers. Cloth napkins instead of synthetic wipes. Table decorations made by crew members who had discovered artistic talents they never knew they possessed. Zarathek, Mellic's voice continued, there's something else. The humans are organizing what they call a harvest festival at Kepler Station next month. Ships from across the sector are invited to bring food and share meals together. No emergency, no crisis, just beings gathering to eat and enjoy each other's company. A festival celebrating food and fellowship, Zarathek mused. The efficiency experts would have seizures. Indeed. Will you attend? Zarathek looked around her transformed galley, where her crew worked together with easy familiarity, preparing food that would comfort and nourish refugees who had lost everything. She thought about the past 6 months, the friendships formed over shared meals, the problems solved around dinner tables, the simple joy of feeding someone well, and watching their face light up with satisfaction. We wouldn't miss it, she replied. After the transmission ended, Zarathek found herself thinking about the report from the Galactic Trade Council. They concluded that the human approach was too dependent on individual choice and emotional engagement to be systematically implemented. They were absolutely correct, and they'd completely missed the point. The humans had never tried to create a system. They'd simply lived according to their values, treating every encounter with other beings as an opportunity to provide care and create connection. They'd shown the galaxy that efficiency wasn't the highest virtue, and that some things were worth doing not because they were optimal, but because they were right. Voss approached with a datapad. "Captain, we've received 17 requests from ships in the area asking if they can join us for our meal tonight. Apparently, word is spreading about our cooking. Tell them they're all welcome," Zarathek replied without hesitation. And Voss? Stir a new pot of soup, a bigger one. As her crew moved to accommodate their unexpected guests, Zarathek reflected on how much had changed since that day when they'd first encountered the wandering star. The humans had shown them that the most advanced technology in the galaxy couldn't replicate the simple act of one being caring for another. They demonstrated that civilization wasn't measured by efficiency or optimization, but by how well its members took care of each other. The galaxy was slowly learning what humans had never forgotten, that sharing a meal prepared with care was one of the most profound ways to say that someone else's life mattered. It couldn't be systematized or regulated or monetized, but it could be chosen one meal at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one decision to care at a time. And across the galaxy, more and more beings were making that choice every day. The smell of fresh bread filled the ship as Zarathek went to welcome their guests, knowing that tonight, like every night since they'd learned to truly cook, no one in their care would go hungry, and that, she thought, was the most advanced technology of all.